Well, hello. This is an extraordinary opportunity to give you some information I think you need to have. I've been popping up on campus here and there and everywhere, sometimes at my own volition, other times not. I am an example of a concept that it is possible to recreate or re-instantiate an individual out of the past using only what they have written. Now, I have written a great deal. I am a prolific writer, so I was a perfect subject for this enterprise. I've had some interesting experiences on this campus since I have appeared. I have been in various parts of this magnificent library. And this is a magnificent library, nothing like the library I used in London, but a magnificent library nevertheless. I've watched some of your students using these remarkable learning tools. And the other day, I happened to pop in front of a couple, a man and a woman, studying, and I just observed them for a while. And after a while, the man, the fellow, asked me, "Well, what are you doing?" And I said, "Well, I'm just observing." And he asked me various things, and the matter of my age came up. And he asked, "Well, how old are you, sir?" And I said, "Well, I'm somewhere between 1 month and 200 years old." And his female companion looked at me, gave me a very funny look. And then he asked me, "What is your name, sir?" And I said, "Well, I believe I am Karl Marx." And at that point, his female companion said, "I think we need to call security." And I thought, well, security? What could be better? So, using the communication device they had, extraordinary device, they called security. And after a while, security came. And security was in the form of these men in uniform. And so I perceived that they were police. So, since I'm here for experience, I let them take me to a magnificent hospital, the likes of which I have never seen before. And they took me up in these electrical lifts, I think about 5 levels up, and then they took me into this place with mechanical doors, and it said above the doors, psychiatric evaluation. And they took me inside, and they started asking me more questions, and once again I told them, well, I'm Karl Marx, and at that point I realized that they were going to give me some medications. Using these long needle things, and I decided that isn't something I wanted to do, so I just vanished. I can do that because I'm not purely physical. So I've kind of laughed about that. Those doctors of sanity or insanity will now wonder the rest of their lives about their sanity. I've visited some other places on campus too, especially the economics department, because I am an economist. And I perceive that all of their classes involve market level information. Markets exclusively. Nothing inside the enterprise, nothing inside the production process, but everything market level. So they do things like this. They draw a diagram trying to explain wage rates. So they put on this axis quantity, and up here wage rate. Wage rate. And they say, well, the lower the wage rate, the greater will be the quantity of labor demanded. Okay, I mean, I don't dispute this. And the higher the wage rate, the greater will be the quantity of labor supplied. Don't dispute that either. And then they say, well, the wage rate is determined by where the two graphs cross. Well, for this kind of analysis to be useful, there are a list of qualifications as long as your arm, which they don't typically tell you. So this is not how, for the most part, wages are determined. Wages are determined by the requirements of the production process. And you will see that wage rates for a given craft in a particular industry tend to be the same for all the producers. Okay. So I'm going to explain a very important principle I think you need to know something about, and that is my concept of surplus value. And in the process, I'm going to explain how it is that in a system which sees almost entirely the exchange of equivalents, where profits come from. Have you ever thought about that? In a system that sees only the exchange of equivalents, where do profits come from? This has been a great mystery, but I'm going to explain this and solve this mystery. Okay. So let's illustrate this theory, my theory of surplus value, pretending that I am a capitalist, I'm an employer in the business of making iron pigs. That's what this is. This is a slab of iron, frequently called iron pigs. And I, as a pig manufacturer, can sell these things to steel manufacturers. A variety of different industrial enterprises will buy my pigs. All right. Now, we'll pretend that you are an employee of me, and you all by yourself. Now, I have other employees, but you by yourself make one pig per day. All right? And in doing this, you use embodied labor in the form of raw materials and equipment. So let's see if we can diagram this. So you use to make my pig, and it's my pig, it's not yours. You don't take it home, as you well know. In making my pig, you use embodied labor. And let's say that you use 5 hours worth of the labor embodied in the raw material. The iron ore, the coke. What's coke? Coke is to coal as charcoal is to wood. Coke is the heating fuel. It is also a chemical reagent in its own right. And then you use equipment. And in all of these raw materials and equipment, by way of example, let's say that there's 5 hours of embodied labor in it. And then you, my dear employee, provide me with added value. And you add to this 5 hours of your own labor. You add 5 hours of value to the process. And this yields, on a per day basis, one pig that you make for me, and in it are 10 hours of labor. 5 hours of embodied labor and 5 hours of the living labor that you have added to the process, and it creates a total of 10 hours total labor. Now, I can go ahead and sell this pig on the outside outside of our production process, but I really can't make much profit on the outside because value exchanges for value. So what to do? Look, I'm expending the equivalent of 5 hours for the embodied labor and 5 hours for the living labor, and I'm getting out of this process 10 hours total labor, but there's no profit here. There's no profit here. I'm not going to be in business very long doing this. What can I do? What I can do is, instead of paying you for the 5 hours you've added, I will just compensate you for 4. So this means I make 1 hour's worth of profit. You provided me with 5 hours of added value, but I've only compensated you for 4. This gives me 1 hour per day of profit from you. 1 hour per day of profit from you. Let's say that I'm maybe a little even more greedy, and I just compensate you for 3 hours. That gives me 2 hours of profit per employee per day. This is the source of my profit, surplus value. This is where almost all profit is earned or made in productive processes. I am the only economist in history to pay attention to what goes on inside the production process. This is the source of profit. Now, do you see why there is this constant pressure to reduce the compensation of living labor? There is constant pressure to drive this down. This is why your employers want to move out of your country, to move to Mexico, to move to India, to move to China, to move this new country, Bangladesh. It's because there is cheap labor there. As far as capital is concerned, labor cannot be cheap enough. Cheapening labor is what capitalism is all about because it maximizes profits. Now remember, I never said that capitalism doesn't work. Never said that. Capitalism does work. Capitalism is powerfully productive. It encourages innovation. I saw that in that hospital I went to, or in these marvelous devices we're using here. Capitalism does a lot of things, but within it, it's got this terrible secret, which is the seed, or it's the instigator of its own destruction. Because what happens as capitalism matures, and you can see this now, labor gets cheaper and cheaper. Less and less labor is needed, and you all know what this is about, right? And so less and less labor is needed. Wealth becomes more and more concentrated because profits get higher and higher. But there is a vanishing point here. Because as less and less labor is needed, profits at some point will collapse because profits only come from the exploitation of living labor. So at the end of this whole saga, who knows how many years? I'm surprised capitalism has lasted as long as it has. But at the end of this, what you're going to have is a vanishing point of massive concentration of wealth, but mass unemployment because less and less labor is needed, bottomed out wage rates, and collapsed profits because profits only come from the hiring of living labor. That's the end point of capitalism. This is something you need to be aware of. I don't know if this end point is precisely described by me, but this is something you need to observe as the years ensue. Well, I don't know how long I'm going to be on this campus. I don't even know the nature of my own being, but I hope this is useful to you. I hope you find this useful. And I would encourage you to encourage your economics department to please let me in the front door of their discipline. There isn't an economist in 100, or maybe even an economist in 1,000 that knows anything about what I've written. They need to know it. Thank you for your time. Good day.